Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am Anna, if you don't know me, and today I am going to be doing a writing experiment video. This is the first of its kind that I have ever done. I put up a poll on my community tab, which is the first one I've ever done because it just showed up about a month ago, and I am taking an entire month to get to this video, but I've been a little bit daunted by it, honestly. I'm kind of nervous because I have trouble with follow through. Like, I say that I'm going to do this thing and then I get nervous and then I don't do that thing. And so I have kind of been putting it off a little bit. So the poll itself was all about writing experiment videos. I had a couple of different options, like Brandon Sanderson's writing routine, Ursula Le Guin's writing routine, which I'm a little bit sad that not more of you picked that one, because I'll put up a little screenshot of her writing routine. After 8 p.m. she's very stupid and we don't talk about that. I felt that. The one that did win is I wrote a story to the Prince of Egypt soundtrack, and I actually started this idea in 2021 when I lived in Idaho, and that was obviously about 2 years ago. It was a long time. There's a lot that happened in between then and now, and so I actually have footage of myself doing that. Sort of getting myself prepped for it, which really just meant listening to the soundtrack and sort of getting ideas for it. We moved, things changed, and I never got back to it. I've been wanting to, but I figured this is actually the perfect opportunity because it puts me on the spotlight. It forces me to have to do it. I'm starting this afternoon because when I get up in the morning to actually write it, it will be dark. Actually, no, it technically won't be dark. It'll actually be very bright, except that we close everything because it's nighttime. But I live in Alaska, so it's always daytime in the summers. So my husband will be asleep, and obviously with us being in such close quarters, that doesn't work out very well. But, so I'm shooting this right now, and I will do the actual writing of the story in the morning and talk about it after I write. I have about 3 hours to get it all done, and so it's going to be a short story. I am hoping to get it written, read through, and edited so that I can actually post it with this video as well, all within that 3 hours, and I can talk about it. The main goal with this story is to figure out if I can do it. It's a very intense soundtrack, and I always find myself singing along no matter where I am or what I'm doing, and like getting overly emotional. It's a completely flawless soundtrack, and it hits all of the points in a soundtrack that I am looking for. Second reason is to see if the soundtrack itself influences the writing. I'm thinking that it probably will. I'm, listening to it. It's very dramatic. It's very hopeful, there's betrayal, and there's just a whole lot of stuff to pick up on within the soundtrack that I think would definitely influence the writing. I think when we compare it to all of the other works that I have done in general, I do think that there will actually be a difference in the, maybe not necessarily the quality of work, maybe the quality of work, but the tone and intention of the story itself. I don't officially know what I'm going to be writing. It will be a short story. It will be between 1,000 to 2,000 words in the end. Even in my contemplations, I have still not exactly settled on a story. I think it will probably not be connected to anything I've written so far, but that is difficult because I know that if I start something, it's going to balloon out and become this gigantic thing that I will be able to control at this point, but previously I would not have been able to. So I considered going with something within my own story worlds, because then I already have these stories that aren't gonna get any bigger. They are exactly what they are, and they're exactly what they need to be. And there wouldn't be anything that I'm risking in doing this story right now. However, I went against that and decided to do something that is outside of any of the scope of my stories so far, because I feel like it's going to be a definite different tone, and I want to maintain the integrity of that story and my other stories, so I kind of don't want them to be connected at all. I will throughout the day listen to the soundtrack again and sort of get a feel for it all, as well as maybe look up some prompts and see what I can come up with before I actually sit down to write in the morning. I am technically supposed to be working on an article right now, so I'm gonna go do that. We've hit the point in the morning where the sunlight, if I sit in front of the window, it's just way too bright. I find myself actually kind of struggling with this. I didn't necessarily think that I would, but I'm struggling in a way that I thought that I wouldn't. I thought that the issue would be listening to the soundtrack, and I find myself just kind of singing along with the songs that are, you know, singable, and writing to the ones that aren't, like the ones that are strict instrumentals. And so in that regard, it's actually been pretty easy. The thing that I didn't realize that I might struggle with is the content of the story. I think my mind is just so far on Project DW that all of the prompts that I am getting, I decided to go with grabbing my prompt notebook and picking a couple that I might think would go along with this challenge. And the challenge is more about like figuring out the content of the thing rather than not being able to write during the music. I think I might switch gears because the scene that's shaping up, I don't like it. The thing that I've always struggled with in writing is, and all of my teachers, all of my family, all of my everybody who's ever read anything will say like, this is really good, but I can't figure out what the conflict is. And so I've had to be very intentional in like stating the conflict, or, you know, in not so many words, in just putting down what the conflict actually is. And I think because this scene, I'm not finding the conflict. It's like pure resignation in what's going on. So I think I might switch gears, pick a different scene and go for it, but I'm not entirely sure. I didn't realize that this is something that I would struggle with in this challenge, which hasn't actually proven to be much of a challenge. I'm still able to write during the thing. It's more in like, you know, what should I write? All right, I'm not entirely sure if I would call this experiment a success or not. The point of this experiment was to see if I could write to the soundtrack in general, if it would influence my writing at all, and also if I could almost free write without a point to the story in the end. And I think that I sort of figured out that I'm a plotter, more a plotter than a pantser. I think I have a little bit of both. Like, I think we all do in the end. But I think I lean heavily towards the plotter side. I mean, I love to plot. I love to know what's going on in the story. But then I get to a point where I'm like, I'm bored almost, which is what happened with Project Reese. I outlined the crap out of that story, and then I didn't have anything that I didn't know about the story. And so sitting down to write it, I just kind of got bored and I was like, this is not fun anymore. And I think that I think that thinking that way takes away the purpose of writing in general, or the purpose of the first draft in general. The first draft is really just to get the thing written. That's the goal of the entire first draft. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to, you don't even have to like feel the spirit of the words flowing through you or anything like that. It's just to put the words on the page. And eventually you can feel that spirit again. But in the drafting part of the thing, it's literally like A, B, and C did X, Y, and Z to get here. And I think if I took more that approach, which I'm starting to a little bit with Project EW now, if I took more that approach, I think I would be a lot more successful in the drafting phase. I feel like I take way too long to draft things. I think that plotting could work out really well for me if I get in the mindset of this draft is just to write the thing down. And I don't even have to want to do it. But I can't get to the point that I love the editing and the making things pretty. Like there's so much that I add in the editing phase that is just not there in the drafting phase. And I think that if I were to speed draft things, then the actual editing of the thing would come a lot faster. I would skip through the point that I don't like, that I'm not having any fun with. And it's not like the entire drafting process is not fun. There's some gold that I find in there that I really enjoy certain parts of it, but then most of the time, it's like 95% of the time is just writing the thing down. And the other 5 is finding little nuggets of hidden wisdom that ultimately end up in the final draft and are what I want to share. So in the end, this experiment was not necessarily a failure, but also not quite what I expected it to be. Okay, editing Anna here. I realized that I didn't really explain a whole lot about the end result. I want to talk just a little bit about why I don't think the experiment worked for me, though I do want to try again in the future. There are obviously a lot more epic soundtracks that we can do this to. One of the major reasons that I don't think it worked for me is because I know this. I know this for a fact. Putting pressure on myself is not a wise thing. Like, and it's not a long run sort of thing. I can do things in the distant future. Hi, Birdie. I can do things in the distant future and prepare myself and get myself adequately ready for things. But right now, if I try to sit down and if I try to force myself into something, it's not going to work. So, like, trying to force myself into this one story, into this one idea, I think that's where my experiment fell apart. I tried 2 different prompts in order to get them done, and neither of them really fit. The big reason for that is because I was trying to write for this thing that I don't normally write. I don't normally write in, it's not even I don't even have a genre for it. It's just like almost free-flowing brain dump kind of stuff that's definitely got to be fixed up. Neither of the ones that I wrote from led to anything that I normally write in. I picked one and I finished it and I wrote through it, and it's not what I normally write. It's not bad per se. I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's great, but it's not horrible. I'm also not going to do the self-deprecating thing and say that it's the worst thing I've ever written, because it's not. I've definitely written worse, but it's definitely not great. I do think that the next time I try this sort of experiment, I want to go a different route with it and maybe try doing it all in one go, because I sort of listened to everything separately. I listened to the soundtrack several years. I mean, really, I listened to the soundtrack all the time, but I listened to it specifically with the intention of this experiment several years ago, and then I listened to it again. And I had all of these ideas for it several years ago, but I lost the notebook that I had the ideas written down in. they're gone. So I just decided to do this whole prompt thing and go with that. And then I listened to it the day before I actually did the experiment. And then while I was listening to it, I think next time what I'm going to do is sit down and listen and write at the same time. I'm going to go in with an idea in hand and do that instead of this sort of like free-flowing, let things happen the way that they happen, you know? I do have something for you guys to read. It is not good. I'm not gonna, you know, sit here and tell you that it's the finest thing I've ever written. It's definitely not. But it is a thing. It is what I wrote during this experiment. I'm going to go through and I'm going to edit it. Then I'll post it on my website and you can check it out there if you want to. It will be linked in the description. That's the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new and you want to hang out longer, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way you are updated every single time I post a new video. With that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, keep writing forward.